Reverend Kenjitsu Nakagaki is a Buddhist priest ordained in the Jodoshinshu tradition of Japanese Buddhism. He's a president of the Buddhist Council of New York, vice president of the Interfaith Center of New York, and community clergy liaison for the New York City Police Department. Reverend Nakagaki is also a master calligrapher who studied the Campo-style calligraphy when he lived in Japan. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
In this segment, we're going to talk about you, all about you, and we want to hear about what your background is.
I'm originally from Japan, and I was born in Osaka, and so I'm raised in the Kansai so-called area, Osaka, Kyoto. So I went to the university in Kyoto, and that's where I studied Buddhism. And actually, my temple, meaning my grandfathers and generation we have some temple family, so-called, and that's in part of the Osaka, and so it's most of the life is actually in Osaka, Kyoto, that area, and so I was actually ordained 1980.
That's a long time ago.
Seems that way. Well, for me, it was just like yesterday. And so maybe my kind of life, especially when I was like little, like, elementary school, teacher always asked the questions of what you wanted to become. And I don't have any things that I wanted to become.
You never
but I have one thing that I don't want it to become. That's a Buddhist priest. I guess that's one of the, normal people don't think that way anyway. But because my grandfather has a temple, right? So my experience in that...
So your grandfather was a Buddhist priest.
Right, and then my experience at the temple may not be as good one. And also, at that time, maybe the image of the Buddhism is also like funerals and also kind of sad occasion in Japan. And so it's like, for me, it was not as attractive, the profession that you wanted to be. Yeah. But then somehow I went to the university in Kyoto, which was kind of Buddhist university. So you have to take a Buddhist class anyway. But that experience was very interesting for me because it was a different Buddhism that I understood, which means cultural or ritual type of Buddhism. But then the one that I learned at the school university was definitely the doctrine, more like a teaching of the Buddha, or interdependence and compassion, wisdom, and all those different aspects of Buddhism. And then the life story of the Buddha and how the Buddhism spread, and then affected all the cultures and way of thinking and values. And so those are very, very interesting for me.
And so as a college student, you're like, wow, this is really interesting. This is what my family is practicing, but you don't really know it because you don't know the background for it.
So sometimes we only see the surface, the things of what's happening, we see, but yet behind the scene, or that's something that more depth or important aspects there. That's probably one of the awareness for me at that time, and so that's changed my life. And
that one class, or
it was one class, and so it makes it kind of interesting. But my uncle was actually also a professor at that particular university. That's one of the reasons that I went there too. My major was a Buddhist history. It's but one of why I took the Buddhist history is because I was interested in the history itself. But my uncle suggested this school is specialized for the Buddhism. So it's better to have something Buddhism related. So history, I like history, but then this is a Buddhist school, so that's why I took the Buddhist history. And so which means I need to know a little bit about Buddhism too, of course. And I thought it was an interesting time that, there's a movie called Roots, the black people and finding where the roots is. So from that, that's about the time for me there too. So, maybe this might be a good opportunity for me to find out my roots of the temples and so forth. And so it worked out that way. And my uncle also told me, oh, you should take I don't know whether I should share this kind of story here or not, but
Sure.
you know, oh, you should become license of the Buddhist priest, so-called, because once you got into this university, you can ordain easily, meaning that you don't have to go through all the different paths, but you can just go because of your students and you learn the Buddhism as the assumption. And so I decided to, I went and then I actually ordained without knowing much of the things. But that experience was, for me, it was very interesting because it's like, I thought it was a wrong place I was for the first time. I mean, this is all, I don't know anything about Buddhism, but I'm here. But one thing is, since I was a little bit become interested in Buddhism, so maybe easiest way to learn Buddhism is become monk. I mean, simple.
That's what you thought?
Yeah, I mean, simple thoughts. So, but then most of the people who have ordination, they know a lot of things about Buddhism. I don't know much. But so in a way, for me, that became the beginning of how, I wanted to live life or, maybe learn more. So,
wow.
So it's like a beginner's mind that is starting from
like
there.
Really beginner's mind, yeah. You didn't know anything, so
Right.
yeah.
I failed so many times. I can't memorize all the names of the different things, but still somehow passed. And then also when I was at the university, like a second year of the university, they started overseas ministers course, which means the people who take that course is go to the United States or other countries, Canada or Brazil and so forth, and then go to the other country to sort of share the Dharma, the teachings. And so it happened to be the first, that course is going on at the university. So I'm one of the first students graduate for that particular course.
They sent you here to the United States.
That's why I'm here.
in New York specifically?
No. There's a Buddhist Churches of America is the kind of organization. So they have many different temples, especially many Japanese American temples in the West Coast. And so I served first time when I came, 1985. I was assigned to Seattle, Seattle, Washington. I stayed there 1985 to 89 for 4 years. Then moved to another assignment to the Fresno, California. More specifically, Parlier. But people don't know where the Parlier is. It's in California anyway, somewhere in Central California. So I stayed there for 5 years. Then after, altogether 9 years in the West Coast, and then transfer, or I request for coming to other temples, and so I came to New York.
So you specifically wanted to come to New York, or it just happened?
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to simply because California temples.
No.
Well, I don't know. I mean, they're fine but then a lot of time is the Japanese American communities, and but like a New York area is for me was a challenging things.
Because there's not so many Japanese Americans
Not so many Japanese Americans, and so and then at the same time,
so you get to talk to people like us, like the ordinary folks.
That's one of the reasons. And then because that's challenging for me, how much do I know about really Buddhism too? So, and then after 10 years knowing some of the culture, maybe this might be a good opportunity for me to really kind of change totally the situation. But at the same time, New York is still, the New York. So also, actually, there's a different reasons too. Of course, I like New York because I used to still like the Beatles. So the John Lennon was killed and so forth, so place, and then Central Parks. I mean, that's another one aside of the story, because actually it is very important for my life for the Beatles, because that song itself make me interested in more learning, the English part, and also kind of, their music has also Eastern elements, right? So they sort of introduced the Eastern religion in that way, to the West in a way. And so for my English, my textbook of English is a Beatles song. So after I start listening to the Beatles, all the lyrics, then I guess my score of the English is much better at the junior high school. And so that's where, things kind of moving. So in a way, for me, the Beatles itself is a very important part. And everything do by themselves. The philosophy that they have was sort of, for me, was very interesting too. Because sometimes Japanese people rely upon the others, group oriented. So, but then the idea of you just be responsible for your own life and do whatever they can do yourself, So, so that idea itself is very appealing to me too. And so there are many parts of it. I mean, of course, I'm not here to talk about Beatles today. But so that's one of the reasons, to be here, like the Imagine Circle. So maybe that's because of that I'm start doing a lot of peace activities here too. Because it happened to be the New York Buddhist Church where I was assigned 1994. And I left 2010, like 6 years ago. But there's a statue which was survived in atomic bomb from Hiroshima. It was sent to the New York Buddhist Church, 1955. So 10 years after the war, as a symbol of the peace. And so it's important to talk about appealing. Well, at least the statue represent sharing the peace to the world. And then, by sharing the experience of Hiroshima or Nagasaki, then, people learn, tragedy shouldn't happen to anybody. It's not whose faults and so forth. That's totally different idea. But the reason is to tragedy shouldn't be applied to anybody. The atomic bomb should not be used to anybody else. And then so that's one of the important part of it. And so I start involving from 1994, which happened to be the 50th anniversary of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki Day. And so from there, I start doing a lot of interfaith activities, because peace cannot be talked about just on, Buddhism itself, my own tradition itself, but I need to have, invited all different religions. That's where I started doing the interfaith activities too. So it's actually all related in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so is the Buddhist tradition you come from, do they also have a peace activist background or not so much? Do you want to talk a little bit about that tradition?
Because my tradition also, the Hiroshima is actually a lot of people who are killed in atomic bomb was actually my tradition. That's one of the dense place that a lot of Pure Land, Jodoshinshu traditions live there. And considered as one of those, we call Akimonto, is a very strong Jodoshinshu or Pure Land followers. And and the statue, so that's why the temple, in front of the temple, there's a statue of the Shinran, who is the founder of the Jodoshinshu tradition. He lived actually 1173 to 1262 in Japan, of course, Kyoto areas, and he was born in Kyoto, and he studied Buddhism, and then he bring the Buddhism down to the common people. And so that's one of the tradition, not the monastic tradition versus like lay-oriented tradition. So the Pure Land tradition that I practice is actually lay-oriented.
That's the one that you were born into, is that correct?
Also.
Yeah, okay.
Happened to be that way too.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, this Shinran himself is the first probably monk who officially get married, and then they have family, and then practice Buddhism.
At the same time.
Yeah. So.
And so in your tradition, you can get married. In other traditions, you can't?
In Japan, they can, but they shouldn't.
Oh, they shouldn't?
Well, I don't know.
Depends on the tradition, right?
Right. But it's like a government policy. One point of the government policy, priest also
can marry.
More like force them to get married.
I'm sorry, what?
Force them to get married.
Force them to get married. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but,
they told them they should.
In one point of the history, but that's continue. So
all Japanese monks can get married.
Yeah. And then
because that's not. I don't think that's usual, right?
No, not other
Buddhist
Buddhist countries are different.
Yeah.
But in terms of Japan, it is some facts of those particular history. And yeah, but at the same time, maybe Japanese Buddhism itself is started by more like a Prince Shotoku, who is like a 5th century, and he is actually one of the prince. So we become emperor, supposed to become emperor, but he didn't. But he introduced Buddhism. But he's a lay people, and so lay people, Buddhism is very, very important aspects of when the Buddhism came to Japan. And then this Prince Shotoku, he's all respected by all different Buddhism in Japan, actually. And that Japanese Buddhism, I don't know whether you're familiar with it or not, but they tend to be more like founder-oriented. You know, there's a Pure Land tradition, they talk about Nembutsu only, Namo Amidabu. And then the Zen tradition, the sitting only, and like Nichiren tradition, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo only. And then all those, you know, omri. And then also there's a Tendai tradition, Shingon tradition, and different tradition is all mixed. But then, so in a way, they, you know, emphasize the founder of each school of Buddhism. But then, so there's very difficult to meet together. But when it comes to the Prince Shotoku, you know, who brought the Buddhism, he was considered as a Buddha in Japan or Bodhisattva in Japan. And so they sort of respect Prince Shotoku. So from that sense, but then he's not the monk. He brought Buddhism. He brought what do you call it? Constitution based upon Buddhist principle. So actually, the Japanese constitution is based upon Buddhism. Actually, first chapter talk about peace is the most important. So that's
really.
Yeah, and the second chapter, how you're going to make a peace, that you need to have a center. So what do you make it to the center? Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which is the Buddhist principle.
Yeah,
and
the Dharma being the teachings, the Sangha being the community.
Right, and so Buddha's, teacher. And so those three consider as the important part of when they start Japan.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 1,500 years ago.
Wow.
And that's the first constitution of Japan. And then he also created the different social, classes. But at the same time, anybody who has an ability to go, they can go up, not by the birth, but rather ability to be considered too. So he was a very interesting person to think of the Japanese history. And, but anyway, so part of the founder, the Pure Land tradition that we have is also, like a Shinran, always respect the Prince Shotoku as the kind of reincarnated one of the Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion to Japan. And so he was a very, very important figure. But anyway, go back to what I tried to I went to so many, but the talk will be like a little bit circle too, I guess.
Yeah, we like that.
Yeah,
it's good.
So, but then coming back to the Shinran, the statue that I have, at the New York Buddhist Temple, and so that's where, for me, the life of New York began from there. And then so it's connected to the peace, and then later we start doing together with like a peace walk with the Riverside Church, and later we go to like the Central Park, the Imagine Circle. Even like last year we finished all the walk at the Central Park and the Imagine Circle. So it's that kind of, it's all connected from that sense of the peace. And then Buddhism itself is really talking about, the world of the peaceful world, and avoid from the the violence and tragedies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, New York has a little bit of a history of violence. It's not. It's,
a little bit.
It's like that place that people are afraid to come to. Oh, New York City, it's so dangerous, it's so violent. So it's kind of interesting that you end up here.
Yeah, actually, Osaka is like a New York, actually.
Is it?
It was interesting for me the first time
People
when
are a little mean there?
Yeah, no, not that way. That's interesting way. But no, when I was in California or the West Coast, this is a foreign country for me, totally. But first time, because New York is so so far from the California at that time at least, so it's like sentenced to some place else. but like exile more like. But then when you come to New York, first thing that I realize is this is like Osaka. I mean, so many people.
In what way?
People, a lot of people there. Right. First of all, amount
Crowded.
of people. Yeah, crowded.
Yeah.
And then transportation, subway, bus, taxis, and sometimes. I mean, nowadays, of course, more bicycle. I mean, that's the way that I grew up. And so it's very, very familiar. And also, Osaka people to bargain to sometimes. I buy this and.
Oh, in Osaka, Osaka they do that?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the food is good always in Osaka.
Yeah.
And then if you're not good food, you can't survive here. Like those. So good thing is always survive, but then not no like a what do you call it, name only, but rather you need to have a contents, quality control. So the things for the challenge for New York itself is also quality, right? Instead of all those quantity things, or only the famous, but nothing inside, and it's not good. So for me, those element is very similar. And shopping, when you're in California, you just park the car. Everything is parked and a big,
Right.
There's a lot of stuff inside. But here, of course, you can just carry with the hands,
Right.
walking around.
Couple blocks.
Yeah,
go to the
like
store.
that. So that's really like Osaka style, and so that's what I feel familiar. So it's like although I live in New York, I feel like I live right next door to the Osaka.
Right. Over the border.
Yeah, it's a little border, so I don't feel far at all to Japan.
And what about that sort of hectic, violent nature of New York City? I mean, how do you feel about that? Are you?
Osaka has a yakuza too.
They're kind of aggressive there.
But they have their own. Of
Oh,
course.
Yakuza's the mafia,
Yeah,
right?
mafia or yakuza kind of thing. So always. But then they are also what do you call it? Part of the society and so forth. So
It feels familiar.
And for me, living here is okay because like these things, people consider me as a master of karate or and all those sensei. I mean, so that's why as long as I wear these things and nobody is
afraid
going to
of
touch
you.
me.
Yeah, they're afraid you're gonna do some moves on them or something.
Right, because I don't know. This is the things, but when I hit somebody, normally they just apologize to me first.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, even So that experience.
You think it's because they think you know karate or something, or do you think it's because you're this spiritual guy?
Probably karate, because people ask me, where is your dojo? Where I can learn, the martial arts.
So do you know martial arts?
Japanese people, they learn at the school.
Oh yeah, so you know.
Well, it's like you have to take those classes, either
Physical
judo
education
or
class
karate or kendo. Those three, they're kind of required to.
So they're right in apologizing to you because you'd beat them
Well,
up.
I don't know.
No.
I don't. Yeah.
No.
But feel a little safer because of that particular. Actually.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice part of it.
Yeah.
And but in general, violence itself is. But then when I came to New York, but violence become much lower.
Because when did you come here? What year?
1985. I mean, 1994.
Oh, 94.
So it's actually the first year, because I brought the car from California, then they break my, Honda
How many
car.
times?
Yeah, so many times, right?
Yeah.
Because every day you see that all the glasses
Yes. I
on
have
the
that
street.
experience here too.
Yeah, and then my radio's gone, my side mirror is gone, my winker is gone, even like a Honda mark is gone. Everything is sort of like taken one by one. And but anyway, these days we don't see anything like that.
No,
so then
it's not
from
the
that
same.
year, only first year is the one that has a lot, but then getting less and less and less, and so crime-wise is much what do you call it? The control.
No, it's so much better than it used to be for sure.
Right. So because the first thing that I was told is don't stop at the signal.
Oh no.
because they will go against the monies and so forth, and don't go to the place that nobody's there. And so it's interesting advice that I get
Yeah.
in New York.
But it sounds like you've adjusted quite well and you like it.
Like,
guess.
well, actually, I kind of doesn't have to adjust myself too much. Like California is a big adjustment for me because I didn't have a driver's license, right? When I first came
Yeah.
to the United States.
Hard to
Here,
get around.
a lot of people
You
in
don't
New
need
York
one, yeah.
I mean, they don't have the driver's license either. So, which is very, very, very common things, right? So, and then I feel sort of a lot of energy here when I first came to, and it was a very interesting kind of, I don't know how to explain by words, but something like even like people are very interesting, because they have their own profession. Sometimes they could be a president of some companies and so forth. I've never met those people before, much, not many people, but so learn from a lot of people here. Actually, before I thought it was very interesting for me was when you learn the Buddhism and so forth, sometimes we learn from the text and so forth. The Buddha said this and that, and so we start reading all those things. But here, people are kind of, really doing that. Meaning, like, teaching is not in a book, but it's start moving around, all over. I can see the teaching here. I can see the teaching from him or her, and so those are actually for me it was very interesting experience. The words are start alive in a real life. So I'm actually very glad to be here and learn many things.
Yeah. Well, we're
in
happy
life.
to have you here in New York. And we're also out of time. So thank you for
Seriously?
spending this time with
Oh.
me. I know, surprising, right?
Yeah.